Hey, welcome. It is the SHOPO Hour. Sorry about the extended time. We had to get the men's room key for Steve. He had locked himself in third stall for the left, but we are in good shape now, and it is good of you to join us. 521-8383, our telephone number. Let's welcome in the fellas and a very, very special guest. Then we'll bring to you primetime traffic and jump into our conversation today. It is always a big pleasure to welcome back into studio Mr. Bobby Cavaco with us. Brother Bobby.
Good morning, Rick. How are you?
Yeah.
Mark always says happy Monday, but I don't know anybody that's so excited for Mondays. The only people I can think it's excited is retirees.
You have a...
But he's always happy Monday.
Their alarm schedule is much different than ours because, as you know, it's my 7th favorite day of the week. So there we have it. But
Yes.
It's good to see you on a Monday.
Good to see you.
Brother Steve.
Well, thank you for rescuing me from stall number 3. No, Rick, always happy and grateful to be here with you and your listeners, as always.
Thanks so very much, brother. And Brother Mark, how's it?
Happy Monday, Uncle Rick.
Oh, wow.
You know the story behind that.
I need a tissue, if you wouldn't mind.
Okay, Brother Rick.
Oh, thank you very much. A woman that I was buying etiquette, she was like 140 years old. Promise. And she gave me back my change and goes, "Oh, there you go, Uncle." I'm like, what? Wait a minute. Anyhow, Brother Bobby, we have a very special guest with us today. Would you mind the introductions?
Yes, so we have Lani Faumuina here, and she is a retiree from HPD in our dispatch division.
Mm-hmm.
She served over 35 years of service
Wow.
as a dispatcher and a dispatch supervisor.
She started when she was 9.
Oh, you're fabulous.
There we go.
Thank you.
Lonnie, I want to welcome you to the program and a very good morning to you.
Oh, thank you for having me.
It is a pleasure. I'm going to go ahead and run primetime traffic. We'll get into a couple of topics, etc. But then we're going to learn from Lani, especially what the front line can really mean and the impact it has. Law enforcement, that's the topicality. We'll focus on that and a whole lot more, but primetime.
It's the SHOPO Hour on News Radio 830 KHVH.
Well, certainly is, and welcome back. We have our time to the bottom of the hour. Telephone number 521-8383. If you would like to join in at any time, we invite you to do so. If you don't mind, cover a couple things, making news recently and some insight. Last week was a somber program as we reported to you and shared thoughts about the terrible events in Manoa. I just want to turn it over. It's been a week. If there's anything that you would like to share in regard to anything concerning this case, then I'll just turn it over to whoever would like to start.
I mean, the more you hear about it, it's just so sad for the family, and basically the motive of why he did this, and then you just feel so bad for them. I have a friend of mine. His daughter went to school with the eldest daughter, right? She went to Iolani, and it's just you don't realize how many people it affects, right? The snowball effect. It's just so sad, you know.
The one thing that stood out about subsequent reports, he shared it. He said, "This is on my mind." He told family members, according to the reports, that he even brought it up with his wife. Advice that if you hear something, we should, as they say something. What would you advise folks to do if they find themselves in a situation with a family member expressing these types of thoughts?
Maybe just don't be, not that they were, but clearly don't be dismissive about it, right? get people talking. But I don't think anybody could have prepared for this, Rick. And as far as what stuck out for me this past week, I was really pleased with how well HPD, especially the folks over there in the homicide section, were communicating with the public. They were very transparent about it. They kept the public informed. And I was really happy to see that because people had questions. The second thing for me that was kind of really like a tearjerker was with the kids that went to school with the kids that passed, right?
Mm-hmm.
And talking about how do you navigate that with your kids? How do you bring that up? Clearly, this is something that the community is going to think about for a long time. And we've said this before. We're not going to have all the answers, but our hearts really go out to the immediate family of those individuals. I mean, can you imagine what they're thinking? So, yeah.
Tough. Bobby?
Just to put emphasis on, there are programs and people that you can talk to if you're having issues, with dealing with this type of incident, and that don't be afraid to seek help or just talk to somebody about it.
Mm-hmm.
When you talk about it, what you're feeling, it helps you to get everything off your chest, and there's other people that can help you to deal with the situation.
I found it that he was in pursuit of a firearm he was unable to obtain, and yet still, and the fact that he could not obtain a firearm proves somebody that is hell-bent to commit a crime, to commit violence, they're going to do it. And so our job collectively, if you're apprised of anything, do you find, and Lani, I can ask you, maybe when you're working with calls, people are reticent to be involved.
Right. I mean, oftentimes, when you go and do public events and they're saying like they wanted to call, but they didn't call because they didn't want to bother us. They weren't sure if it was something. So that's I think one thing is, if you even just have an idea, and they're probably going to kill me for telling them, just call. I mean, if you don't share your information, then we don't know where it can go. And usually, dispatch, you have your civilians there, but they're going to take information, and maybe you won't send an officer out. They could possibly route you to the right division if it might just be beat type of information that they need to pass on. But sometimes just getting that information to somebody that can help you, or at least help you filter it out, would be helpful. But through that whole time that I've been in dispatch, it's not unusual to hear people say they wanted to call, but they weren't sure they could have called. But that's what we're there for. You have a non-emergency and emergency side to pass things along. And so there's that venue to kind of put it out there.
Great. Thank you very much. Thank you indeed. The story emerged that a police officer was assaulted while intervening up on the lee side. First of all, officer doing well?
Yeah, the officer's okay.
Okay. Just first of all, I want to make sure. Second of all, once again, personifying what the risk is to officers every day. And just wanted to remind folks of that. There was a 9-hour. Go ahead.
Can I jump in real quick?
Please.
Rick? This is a credit to Steve Alm and his team. That's an automatic charge. Okay, when you assault an officer, you're getting charged. You're not getting released pending investigation, and it's important to know. And we felt, as a labor union representing the cops that are on the street, that if you hit a police officer, you want to scrap, you want to get in a fight with us, guess what? We're ultimately going to win. We're going to take you to jail, and you know what? The prosecutor's office is going to step in and charge you and set the tone where it's not going to be acceptable to attack the men and women that wear the uniform.
Gotcha. Mark?
And then real quick, they brought up this one incident, but it's happening all the time. It happens all the time where officers are getting assaulted out there. So it's not just one incident here and there. It happens a lot.
Bobby?
With this particular incident, also the media, one of the outlets, got it wrong again in their app.
Oh.
And they actually posted that the officer got arrested. So they got the names mixed up again. Instead of putting the victim or the suspect's name
Yes.
that assaulted the officer and got arrested, they put the officer that.
Oh, my goodness.
So that had to be corrected, but it was out there for some time.
Well, if you hadn't been here, we wouldn't have known that.
Yeah.
So thank you for updating.
And these news venues, I think they owe an apology to the family of the officers and the officer himself. I don't think they're doing that. So if you guys are listening, call that officer's family and apologize.
Yeah.
Or just take the time. How about this? How about take the time to get it right?
Yeah,
Just
that
do
would
your
help.
Here's the thing: do your job and do it accurately and be thorough. And then we don't have to go down this road. Because to Bobby's point, this happened. It's happening kind of frequently. And again, not throwing shots, but how do you confuse the cop from the bad guy? How does that exactly work? Who's not doing their job? Do your job.
It was normal SOP in journalism to immediately print a retraction or a clarification when a mistake was made, even on broadcast news. I rarely, if ever, see or read that anymore.
Yeah.
That once it's out there, it's out there. Well, it's already out there, and there's no recourse. It is 7:24 in the morning. I referenced a 9-hour standoff on the Big Island, where the suspect, in violation of a TRO, had barricaded himself in the home of the issuer of that TRO. 9 hours. It was reported that it was after 9 hours and the work. Let's see. I had written it down. Crisis negotiation. Can you help us understand what that process is and who specializes in that role? Anybody?
Start with the call. Have you received calls?
Oh, when we have barricade situations, usually, where it really does kind of branch out to being something big is on the radio side. Because when you get something that's like a barricade or a hostage barricade situation, they kind of try to take it off channel so that you can still have things running, because there's still calls coming in. That's the one thing. People always ask me about, this TV show. Have you seen it? It's 911 or some other police show that emphasizes dispatching. And they're like, it's so good, isn't it? The one thing, and I hope people realize, we do not have one call come in and then everything focuses on that only. I mean, we've had unfortunate things like officer shootings. And even with that, you still have calls that are coming in. So when something that big happens, you try to move it to a separate channel. You can have someone focus just on that one. And then the regular stuff that's coming in, they kind of work with that. When they have a hostage situation, a lot of that transpires on the roadside. And you have your field supervisor out there and they request it. Back in the day, long time ago, they used to make that request through dispatch. Now there's a lot of things that they can do quicker, faster with technology. They can call direct, and then it moves it along faster to get somebody out there to start the negotiation.
Was it a point when scanners were still available?
Oh, that was fun. Yes.
That people would be privy to that ongoing scenario.
Right, and then that's why it was so important to move them off of a channel that they could get a scanner, could latch onto, and to another one that wasn't monitored by commercial technology.
Right.
And then that's why it was also important to use codes. Hawaii hasn't been like the mainland and use a lot of codes, but we do have certain things that you'll use phonetics or you use certain codes for types of cases, because even though a person may have been arrested for certain things, you still cannot just broadcast over the air all the things they've been arrested for. So a lot of times you have to use different codes or terminology to convey that to them without making it, blatant to the public. So even though the technology is better now and it's harder to get scanners that pick up, we could be standing here, Steve will be on the radio and you'll be walking by and we don't want some information just blared out over the air and you hear and you go, oh my gosh, I know who that is, especially if you want to contain the case and not jeopardize it by getting information out there too soon.
See, that's what I was going to follow with, is the information that is publicly accessible could in some way perhaps compromise a prosecution
Right.
because of things that are said.
Yeah, and that's something that, especially when they come into training, it's like you're going to be privy to a lot of information that it's not yours to use, right? Like I'm sure when they were like names of the people that are involved, you can't just, share that with somebody, or when you go out and talking story with someone, you got to be careful about who you're talking to and who you're around, because you don't know. And it could jeopardize the case somehow. So you got to be cautious of that.
Say no bueno, Steve.
No, Rick, just to kind of give a backstory here, a barricade situation is going to be declared really by the first-line supervisor, which would be the patrol sergeant of the officers there in a particular sector that responded. That patrol sergeant is going to notify the watch commander lieutenant, hey, LT, we have a situation here. It's a barricade situation. LT is going to start making his or her way to the scene. The lieutenant then, most likely not over the radio, but just to make a notification, the lieutenant then is going to notify the captain and or the major of that particular district. Additionally, that watch commander then probably off the radio or on the radio is going to make a notification. Central, I'm going to be calling command council. I need to make a couple notifications. They're going to get on the phone. They're going to make calls to dispatch. The watch commander, the lieutenant that oversees the dispatchers, and say, hey, listen, we have a barricade situation. This is my cell phone number. Have SWAT contact me. And then in addition to the SWAT team coming to providing that tactical performance, you're going to have individual detectives from the Criminal Intelligence Division that have training in hostage negotiation and this kind of thing, and then they're going to get called out. And everybody assembles. So the patrol units get there. They make a perimeter. They decide that they're not making entry. They do some basic evacuations because depending if things need to get more serious, we don't want long gun rounds going through walls and whatnot, and we need to give the SWAT guys room to work. So we're going to set a perimeter. We're going to make evacuations necessary. We're going to hold that perimeter. The watch commander lieutenant is going to make notifications. SWAT's going to call that lieutenant. The lieutenant's going to come to the scene. So you're going to have patrol personnel. You're going to have the sergeant. You're going to have the watch commander lieutenant. Then eventually the SWAT team's going to roll in. Then eventually you're going to have the detectives that have the training that in hostage negotiation. They're going to show up, and then the SWAT commander is going to take charge of the scene.
I got you. Thank you for that.
Yep.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. It's already 7:30. Goodness gracious. It is going to be another great segment of the SHOPO Hour coming your way with Brother Bobby, President of SHOPO, Brother Steve, Vice President of SHOPO, Brother Mark Cricchio, retired Major and the most handsome man in the room, and Sister Lani joining us. Were you going to say something?
I said you can't argue with that.
Oh, good. Thank you for the confirmation. And thank you for writing that down on a $50 bill so I could read it. That was awesome.
I was at 100.
That's okay. We're going to continue on, and more to come after message and data.
It's the SHOPO Hour on News Radio 830 KHVH.
Once again, welcome back. It is the SHOPO Hour, 521-8383. Would love to hear from you and be a part of the program. Brothers Bobby, Steve, and Mark, Sister Lani in studio with us and enjoying our time together. I was wondering if we could shift just a little bit. I just want to cover a thing in the ledge before we focus attention on Lani, who's with us today. A lot of concern about Bill, if I remember the number 1601, died, and thank goodness. However, the session's not over. Something could always emerge. I'd like to get your reaction on that. And is there anything else in the big square building that still has your attention? And then we'll transfer to the state of the city after we talk big square building. Reactions to 1601, mostly dead.
Yeah, I mean, good for people speaking out, just like when, we speak out against it. And we've always said this was a backdoor bail reform bill, right? But they're going to keep trying. Every year, they're going to keep trying. And like you said, session's not over yet, so you don't know what kind of tricks they're going to pull, up their sleeves. So, but good for the people and good for everybody staying vigilant and looking at this stuff.
Amen. Brother Bobby?
Yeah, we're happy to see 1601 die. And like Mark said, they're gonna keep trying every year until they get something that's passed in kind of like in that form. Stuff that we were watching is there's a bill, I'm not too sure on the number, but the legislature has kind of got their hands as far as trying to regulate pursuits with all 4 departments. So they actually there's a bill about you only can pursue for these certain offenses, and they list the offenses and if it gets too dangerous, etc. And they're actually putting this in statute, which will actually affect all 4 police departments. Already the 4 police departments already have a stringent pursuit policy, and if it's not followed, our officers are always held accountable. And so it's unfortunate that the legislature is trying to get their hands to try and regulate how the police departments are, conducting their pursuits. But that's something we're monitoring closely. And then the other bill is concerning the new Law Enforcement Standards Board, which will actually get probably funded within a year or two. And our issue with that is we're going to become kind of like California with being post-certified police officer standard training. So that's every officer will have a certification to be an officer in the state of Hawaii, and that certification can be revoked by this particular board that they formed, which has about 18 people on it. Wow. So you have the 4 chiefs, members from the public. Right. Of course, they don't have anybody from the police union on it, which you would think would be.
You would think that would be first and foremost.
And so just our main concern with that is there's nothing in the statute that addresses collective bargaining, such as if an officer is terminated by the chief of a department and goes through the arbitration process and an arbitrator awards the officer's job back, what takes precedence? Is it the arbitrator's award of giving the officer job back, or is the Law Enforcement Standards Board's decision? Does that stand? Because if they revoke his certification and say he can't be a police officer, but then you have the arbitrator saying, no, they erred in their decision, the officer goes back to work. There's nothing in the statute that addresses that. So now you have 2 conflicting decisions.
Right.
And so that's our main premise with that bill.
What a mess.
Yeah.
So we've had crossovers, so it's made its way through. We'll check status by our next visit. But bureaucracy and regulation is at the heart of so much that ails us. And I do that in regard to regulations, cost of living, how it contributes real estate and so many areas. But this is another case. How many layers do you have to have a microscope on the work that you do? And I understand that there is some regulatory agency, but to have several different layers of compliance, and the one that's bothersome, it negates the very most important collective bargaining agreements that now come under question. And
no, there's so many layers of bureaucracy that oversee an officer and what he or she does, in our jobs. You have internal affairs with each department. You have the police commission. You have tremendous oversight. You have the feds. You have the AGs. So just a lot of oversight for our profession, and we just don't need another layer of bureaucracy trying to, muddy the waters.
It is 7:41 in the morning. I'd like to flip it because I found this to be a positive development. In the mayor's State of the City address last week, he made the announcement, a recruitment bonus that would be offered to prospective officers of $25,000, which I understand would be prorated with different benchmarks and a requirement of service minimum of 3 years. But it was 2 years ago or so, Bobby, that you and Brother Nick had a press conference with others and just said, listen, this is the biggest unkept secret that, yes, we do. And in your work with the department leadership at the time, I remember you were saying, wait a minute, yeah, we have a shortage, but this isn't breaking news. And could you put into contrast what was said and stated then, and has there been any improvements and reaction now to the recruitment bonus for new recruits?
Our main premise back then was trying to point out that obviously the condition of staffing that we were in, that we've been in that short staffing position for almost 2 decades, and the beats that are on the road that go unfilled on a daily basis, the department gets funding for that. And we were questioning why aren't officers in that position? Obviously the entire department is short.
Mm-hmm.
So fast forwarding, now we have thankfully to HPD and the mayor, this recruiting bonus to try and entice people to come into the profession. So I think that it's going to help a lot. I think it'll generate quite a few applicants. I think now, after they get this going, then the focus needs to shift on how do we keep our officers from retiring, correct, on the back end.
Would there be any type of incentivization that could be for potential retirees to remain?
Oh, there's quite a few options. I think one would be like a drop program, which is what LAPD does in Los Angeles.
Mm-hmm.
And what they do in that is officers that are ready or can retire, they put in their papers, they freeze their calculation of what they would get in retirement.
Mm-hmm.
They would start collecting their retirement, and it would get put into a separate account on the side, like a trust account.
Yep.
And they would keep working. Nothing changes. You just keep working as is. And then when you're ready to retire, you can stay another 5 years maximum.
Mm-hmm.
So if you stay another 3 years, you retire, and you get whatever is left in whatever is built up in that account.
Gotcha.
But you're collecting your paycheck as well.
Gotcha.
That would definitely keep people in.
Before we take our break and then focus on Lani, who's with us today, I recall in that PC that you had graphic maps of each district, and that it was highlighted in red that there was a dearth of officers. We just don't have officers in these areas of each district. It was pretty profound. Where are we today, and what will it take? Perhaps the bonus incentive is just one thing to ensure that we have full coverage on each district on the island.
And we still continue to have some of the beats that are unfilled, but at least we got the department to set a standard or a percentage for our districts to not go below that percentage.
Okay.
So that actually really helps out, the officers in patrol about maintaining that percentage.
May I ask before we break, the new work schedule, not so much new anymore, but still rather fresh. What's the response back, participation levels in the 3-day week, and your observations about morale, preparedness, health, energy, things of that nature for our officers?
We've gotten tremendous positive feedback about it. I know Chief Joe in the department did a survey about it.
Mm-hmm.
They haven't released the results yet. But as far as talking to officers that are on the schedule, I'm on the schedule. It's a great schedule.
Mm-hmm.
4 days off every week.
Right.
The days are a little bit long. However, there's a lot of time to recover. But you're still only working, on the road for 12 hours a day.
Would you kindly represent me as I petition my company to work 3 days and have 4 days
Well,
off?
there's a signing bonus now that we have. Maybe you want to change profession?
Well, I could talk somebody into submission. I could be, it's like, I bore you to pieces. But that's good. No, thank you for the update, because it's a profound issue, and we're already at 7:47 in the morning. I want to thank Brother Bobby, Brother Steve, Brother Mark, and Sister Lani, who's in the top of mind range when we come back. Stick around. It's 7.
KHVH Honolulu. It's the SHOPO Hour on News Radio 830 KHVH.
We're already at 7:52 in the morning with Sister Lani in studio with us. And we're going to turn to Lani in just a moment. I'm going to turn to Steve Keogh. 1 minute. Some responses to the recruitment bonus.
So kudos to Mayor Rick and HPD for the recruitment bonus. It's huge because new guys, new men and women coming into the job, they're going to look at money and what that money can do for them. But there's something on the back end that we just have to discuss. And that's cops that have been wearing the uniform and doing the job for a long time, okay? Yeah, you can throw money at them to stay. And maybe, just maybe, if it's enough cash, maybe they'll stick around. But here's a news flash. You want to know what keeps cops working and grinding it out every single day?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to tell you. Let them do their job. Don't come in and tell them how to do it. You want to know how you keep cops working? 1, politicians, don't make crazy laws that make our job harder. That's the first point. Number 2, the prosecutor's office. Back the cops, back the blue, make sure the criminals get charged, okay? The judges, back us in court. Don't view us, take us at our word and send offenders in. Police administrators, chiefs of police, leadership, continue to build the relationship with your cops. It's not all about money for us. We didn't get in this profession to make a ton of cash. We got in it to help the community because we love the community. And guess what, Rick? When you've done something for a long time and people are pushing your buttons, they're like, I'm out. So it doesn't even matter about the money. So to retain guys and girls, let's pay them, okay. But at the same time, it's a combination of what are the judges doing? What's the prosecutor's office doing? What's the community pulse? And also, what are the administrators doing? It's a totality. It's not all about cash on the back end.
Your time with HPD, and there were shortages aplenty, but how did that affect specifically
I would say
COM?
it's the same thing. I mean, it's retention, because I was a training supervisor for almost a decade, and we could get a lot of people in there. You know, all you needed was a high school education or GED, and we'll teach you how to be a dispatcher. And then the hardest part was you have these people go through, and then it's the lack of support sometimes they felt. You know, yeah, of course, money, but I was there for 35 years. It wasn't about the money, you know, and my reason to leave, part of it was administration. Otherwise, I'd probably still be there and couldn't be here this morning. I'd be working, you know, so that support is really important. And really to, like Steve said, let people do their job. When there's so much policies and procedures that get in the way that you can't even, like, you're so afraid to make a mistake that you can't think on your feet, and then that's when people start getting hurt, or you start missing things and you don't relay the right information. So that's the frustration there.
The day-to-day, can you share with us, you mentioned shows like 911.
Yeah.
They give people, you know, an impression or what have you. The reality of dispatch.
The reality is you never know the ending. You know, I mean, when we were talking about the whole tragedy in Manoa, it's like, you know, you always hear the beginning of what happens. And unless you really know somebody on the road or even get a chance to talk with the officers involved, you never know what happens next, because you got to pick up the next call or you got to dispatch the next case. So it's like we always hear the start of every story and never hear the ending. So we may know a little bit more of what's going on, the details from the case. But if you're not working that day, you're just like the public. You're not going to, you only get your information from the news.
Right.
And then you would think having that little bit of insight working that day, you're still not going to know what happens in the end. And I think that's part of, sometimes you never get that closure, you know, and then when big things happen, I mean, I know we're not out there physically on the road, but when you want to start every day with everybody that started work, dispatchers and officers, you want to end with that same number every day. And it's funny how sometimes we can frustrate each other, and it's like, oh, when I see him or her, I'm going to tell her what I think, And then if they get hurt, I mean, it doesn't even have to be fatally hurt. If just even you hear that, somebody assaulted one of the officers, it feels like it's your own brother, sister, your child, and it's very, that part is the hardest part, because we train you on all the skills and mechanics, but that lack of closure is the hardest thing I think for dispatching.
The most rewarding part of the job is?
The most rewarding, I think, is just knowing that you contributed somehow. I always tell people, and no diss to firefighters, but we had one time some lost hikers, and HPD, we have maps and we have our helicopter, and we're triangulating things, and from the dispatch center you can kind of get a step back and figure out, okay, maybe if we go from this angle and then try and ping the number. And so we found the hikers. It was amazing. And then fire came in and picked them up, and everyone's thanking the firefighter, and we're like, what? But it's those little things, that the small stuff that's rewarding, to know that you contributed a little bit to the success of a day ending well.
I understand that there's dire need for staffing in comms. What would you say to folks that are dialed in now that you should apply and you should be a part of this effort?
I always tell people it's the closest thing to being an officer without getting your hands dirty. You still get that learning how to triage a call and code and classify things, and you really have to have that critical thinking and decision making to know what the next question is that you want to ask. Even being on the radio, if you can kind of be prepared as what the officer is going to need, and those couple seconds of being prepared can make it easier for everyone on the road, that you have that information already, or it's at your fingertips, you're ready to run it. If you like, the whole thing about police work, but you feel like you're not physically up to par, that's an option. There's other things you can do in the department.
I love that. Thank you. Thank you for being
Thanks for
here
having
today.
me. Thank you.
And I want to turn to the boys, literally just about a minute and a half left. Brother Mark Cricchio, you're over there with a very dedicated expression.
Vegging. I want to thank Lani for coming today. Thank you, Lani.
Thanks for having me.
And people don't realize, we always said dispatchers were the unsung heroes behind the scenes. And Lani's been responsible for keeping thousands of officers safe throughout her career. So I want to thank her for that.
There we go. Thank you, Lani. Brother Steve, about 10 seconds.
Okay, we can't do our work in the field without the men and women in dispatch leading and guiding us. They're phenomenal. We appreciate what they do. Also want to thank Mayor Rick for coming out to the promotion ceremony. Yeah. He was preparing for his State of the City address. He made time to personally come and shake the hands of all the promotees. That was a class act, and we appreciate him for that.
Thank you, Brother Steve. Brother Bobby, about 10 seconds.
No, thank you. Thank you, Lani, for coming in. It's great.
Yeah. And can't wait till the next time. All of you.
Absolutely.
Thanks so very much. The SHOPO Hour, every Monday at this time. Many thanks. It's 8 o'clock.